Hi, greetings. I heard we're filming this service, and so I'm just going to stare at the camera the whole time, if that's cool with you guys. Man, I'm so high maintenance, thank you. I require a chair, Bible, notes, music stand, all kinds of stuff. Charlie just comes up here in a polyester base layer and spits off the top of his head. And that's that, right? Not me. Whatever, I could get away with no water in the service, it's all good. So we'll go ahead and in the tradition and practice that we have here is that we like to pray for another church. Last service I prayed for Christ Church of Flagstaff, and I'd like to pray for them again. And Pastor Jim Dorman and some of the other pastors over there in the youth ministry and the children's ministry. So if you would like to join me, we're going to pray for our brothers and sisters over there. God, we thank you for this opportunity to gather. Just want to lift up our brothers and sisters over at Christ Church of Flagstaff and the mission that they're working on. Just pray for Pastor Jim and Scott and Chris, Jeff Drayton, and the rest of the staff. I want to lift up the high school ministry and the youth ministries over there. To be with Matt, Joe, and Garrett, and just help them accomplish the mission that you have for them and reach the city for you. And I pray this in your son's name. Amen. All right, so yeah, I got the call out the bullpen a couple weeks ago. Charlie was like, Bayles, can you string together a sentence? And I'm like, I don't know, man. And I was telling this story, and I totally botched it. He's like, if you're going to speak, you're going to have to do it a lot better than that. And so we'll see how this goes. But anyway, when he asked me to speak, he's like, you can speak on anyone. And there's two things that you have to do. One is you have to cover an irrelevant family story. And I'm like, all right, great, I can do that. But I don't have any kids. Most people come up here and they talk about their kids, right? Easy. I don't have that. So I thought I'd just introduce you to my family. Starting with my lovely wife, Jamie. I don't know if most of y'all know her or not. She's a piece of work in these photos. This, I would say, is behavior that is well within normal limits for her. This picture on the left, she was pretty much telling me to get her ice cream. And I was like, oh, you're so cute. Let me take your photo. Yeah. And the one on the right is kind of her giving thanks on Thanksgiving. That's her self-expression, her sense of gratitude. So that's my wife, Jamie. And I thought I'd introduce you to my son, Calvin, on the left here. I think I was 3. Science is pretty amazing. Science does some amazing things. I think I was 3 when I had him. I'm just kidding. I know a lot of you went on the Beyond Malibu trip, and he was the guide. Calvin's been like one of my closest friends for a really long time. And right there, he's kind of looking like the Grinch, I believe. I heard the Grinch. He looks pretty awesome. And that was a hike the other week, and he had the frosty tips going, looking awesome. And I see Bobby's in the audience this one, so I'll call him Uncle Bobby on the right there. He's not looking winded nor tired at all after a hike. That's part of my family, and I'd like to introduce you to my other son, Duder. And so this is our family dog. He's a schnoodle. He's a Schnauzer Poodle mix, right? Halloween, obviously, not his normal attire. And you can see that Duder and I, we have some pretty similar features. Keep it dark. We like to similar ways of how to treat facial hair. Keep it high and tight, close to the face. So that's my son, Duder. He's a good little boy. And so something that I do, most Sundays, my wife and I, we go over to my parents' house. They live here in town on the east side, and we'll have dinner. And something that Duder and I, kind of like a tradition that we participate in, is we have this, a few minutes of what I call regard. And so basically I just kind of hold him like a baby, and we just stare into one another's eyes, into the depths of our soul, and just understand each other, really, is what it is. And so here's some photos, and I used to do a lot of art, and it's been kind of put on the back burner lately. I'm busy doing school and other stuff, and I was like, man, I want to do something. So I figured I'd try and create this art project where every week I want to get a photo of Duder and I in the midst of regard, where I just basically hold him. So here's a couple photos that we're working on. I think we got a couple more. That was that was during what it was like -20 outside, -6 all the time. That's him on the left, and he loves his little corn toy. He's really embracing that nutrition. He loves corn. Yeah, so Duder and I, unconditional positive regard. And there's nothing as therapeutic as staring into a dog's eyes and just being understood. That's all it takes. And an understanding of one another. There's this like really metaphysical, spiritual connection that can't be quantified whatsoever. So that's for family. Pretty good, huh? Completely irrelevant. And so here's another picture of Jamie and I. I'd kind of do a little bit of justice for her. If you know Jamie, she's kind of like a fashion guru. Her job, I always joke that she dresses Flagstaff. She's the buyer for Sagebrush and PG Chill Cottage and The Basement and those stores in there. And she travels all the time, and so she just left to Las Vegas this morning. And so I told her, I was like, man, Charlie's calling me out the bullpen. I'm going to speak at church. And she's like, oh, great. I got to go to Vegas. Two things. One, don't screw it up. Don't embarrass me. And two, you're either wearing this or this sort of thing, right? I'm like, oh, man. Well, I like kind of panic because I'm like, well, every week Charlie wears the same thing. We're pretty like conditioned to understand what Charlie's going to wear. We know we're going to see a polyester base layer, some blue jeans, and some hiking boots, right? And I was like, man, if you make me wear that, like everyone's head's just going to like explode. And so I kind of, checked with her, you're not going to be there though, right? And I was like, okay, cool, I'll wear that option. Won't embarrass you. Yes, love you. And so we're on camera though. Hopefully it won't see that. So I think I managed to maybe embarrass her a little bit. And I'm not wearing the clothes that she picked out for me, obviously. I'm doing my best Charlie impression right here. There's no zip, but that's okay. So check off one box, the irrelevant family story that has nothing to do with anything. Check that off, we're doing it. And then so I guess we'll kind of move towards relevance. How's that sound? We'll start talking about something. So we've been talking about this, we're going through this series called Dead Poet Society, right? We've talked about a bunch of people who've kind of lived out the Christian faith and their stories and theologies, beliefs that they had, sort of talking about those things, right? And so Charlie's like, you know what, you can talk about whoever you want. I'm like, Tupac? And he's like, no. I'm like, Biggie. Nah, I can't talk about Biggie either. I'm like, well, you said anybody. Anyway, so I was President's Day. I'm kind of thinking, who am I going to talk about? I was kind of thinking about talking about Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who's someone who I really like. And then it was President's Day weekend. I'm like, all right, maybe I'll talk about a president. So pull out a penny, flip a penny. Abraham Lincoln staring me in the face, right? I'm like, no way. This is like divine intervention. It's like revelation. And so like, just to like confirm the reliability here, let's try this again. So I pull out a bill in my pocket, it's a $5 bill, throw it, kind of leaves its way down, then Abe Lincoln staring at me again. So I think it only makes sense to talk about Abe Lincoln today, right? Yeah, and so to check off the other box of something that Charlie says, this is what you need to address, is I need to compare who we're talking about to Kyle Miller, right? And so I would definitely say that I have the jump on everyone, because Kyle, honestly, is a good-looking dude. He's a good-looking guy. Does not look like Mother Teresa, like, please. But pretty similar. I think if we dress Kyle down a little bit, give him a beard, boom, Abraham Lincoln. Both looking pretty stoic, too. Stoic and fantastic. Anyway, so, yeah, I didn't really flip a penny or anything, but the way I kind of decided that I wanted to talk about Abe Lincoln was, I don't know if you guys saw the movie Lincoln that was out recently. Yay, nay? Anybody? Okay. Yeah, all right. 2 people. It's like 0.5%. We're doing good. But I saw that recently, like over, around Christmas time. And then right after that, I was really fascinated by that movie and just the character of Abraham Lincoln. And decided I wanted to read the book, Killing Lincoln. And so I read that like just right after that movie and breezed through it and was really just intrigued by this guy. And so I thought it would be cool to talk about him on President's Day. And not to say that he's a saint or anything, but I think there's some things about his life that we could maybe apply to our own lives and to the Christian faith. So disclaimer, 1, I'm not a history buff, I'm no history guru. I'm not going to say that this is like, if you're a history major or something, please don't corner me afterwards and be like, 19, whatever, okay, 1800s, right? So disclaimer. That's I don't know where I'm going with that disclaimer, but disclaimer. So a few fun facts about Abraham Lincoln. 1, he was the 16th president, and I guess in my mind I always thought he was earlier than that. He was born on February 12th, 1809, so he would be 204, 5 days ago, I think. That's kind of cool. And he was assassinated on April 15th, 1865. He was a self-educated person. He became a lawyer, worked as a lawyer out on the prairie, which is a noble profession, by the way, for all you lawyers out there. And then he became a president in 1860. And I think we all know, so the Civil War was 1861 to 1865, and then he was assassinated shortly after the Civil War. So most of his whole presidency, and then after his second re-election, he was in a wartime, I guess. Something I think is really interesting about old Abraham, is there's still like no real consensus on if he was a Christian or not. And I think that's really interesting. And that's really interesting to kind of bring that into this discussion, because we're talking about these people who are like have these significant impacts on the Christian faith and stuff. And there's maybe some evidence or some literature that suggests that while he was growing up, he didn't affiliate himself with the church at all, not like whatsoever, wasn't into it, nothing like that. But then I think in 1862, around there, he had one of his sons passed away, and that kind of created a personal crisis for him. And as a result, I think he kind of turned to religion a little bit, and there's some evidence that maybe he like kind of gave his life over, I suppose, or whatever terms you want to use. And he's also kind of known to read his Bible every morning, and some of the convictions he had really lined up kind of in a sort of a parallel way with some of the stories of Christ in the Bible. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about Abe Lincoln, is I think his life is a huge example to maybe just the Christian life itself. And what we're going to talk about is conviction. So if you can think in your own head, what is the first thing that comes to comes to your mind about Abraham Lincoln when you think of him? You don't have to answer that. Maybe in your own little noggin. But I would guess that a lot of people think the top hat. Anyone think that first thing? Abe? Yeah, tall, lanky, top hat. Good-looking gentleman, similar to Kyle Miller. And then another thing that kind of pops into our minds is his honesty. He had the nickname Honest Abe. And I think it was Geico, I can't totally remember. I don't know if you guys saw that commercial, but they capitalized on Honest Abe very well. And so like his wife's getting dressed and she's putting on the dress and he's getting dressed. He's like, does this dress make me look fat? And he's like, a little bit. And so he kind of has that sort of, I guess he's well known for his honesty as far as kind of being willing to share his opinion and call things as he sees it. But what really stuck out to me from watching the movie Lincoln and from reading the book Killing Lincoln was his conviction. And there's two convictions that really stuck out to me. And one of those was that the nation be unified, that he didn't want to see the southern states secede from the nation. And then the second one there was that the slaves be free, essentially. And so that conviction or that belief really motivated him to get the 13th Amendment passed. And that's what stuck out to me a lot. And so that's what I kind of want to talk about today as far as conviction. So looking at the 13th Amendment real quick, sweet. Yeah, we had some problems with PowerPoint last service. So this is the 13th Amendment. I had it hanging out in just a box in my living room. So I thought I'd get it out and make a photocopy. And I don't know if you guys have ever read the 13th Amendment, but it's really interesting. I thought it was going to be like a really big pain to read and all this, just verbiage and junk, but it's really not. It's really concise and simple. And the 13th Amendment just says, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to its jurisdiction. Boom. And that's the 13th Amendment. And I think that's so cool. Like, his conviction or his belief was that people should all be free. It's that one man is no greater than the next. And so I think this is really evident in his life as far as the 13th Amendment and keeping the nation as a whole is kind of in a sense like his baby. And I really got this sense through the movie that like this is what he cared about. This is what he wanted to dedicate his life to. And eventually kind of led to his death. And so I want to pull up some quotes from old Abe, Honest Abe, that we got. Some of these first few are just kind of silly. When I hear a man preach, I like to see him act as if he were fighting bees. I thought that was pretty funny. He'd be like, like preaching, bees. Marriage is neither heaven nor hell. It is simply purgatory. And I don't know if most husbands nor wives or whoever can agree with that. I think it seemed like he had a pretty crazy wife, and so I think that was probably a really genuine, maybe a generous statement even. I love this next quote. I think it's really funny. If this is coffee, please bring me some tea. But if this is tea, please bring me some coffee. I don't know what this is, but give me whatever it's not. I love that. And then some more serious quotes. I like to see a man proud of the place in which he lives. And I like to see a man live so that his place will be proud of him also. So kind of speaking to the character of a person and the way that they choose to live. And then maybe you've heard this before. A house divided against itself cannot stand. And I believe that's straight out the scriptures, yeah? And that's something that really is correlated or related to his belief or his conviction that the nation should be one, that there shouldn't be two nations, that the South should not secede. And then kind of going along with his conviction and moving forward, I'm a slow walker, which, I mean, if you saw the movie, Daniel Day-Lewis was unreal, right? And he really portrayed that well, not that I know, but he just kind of walked really slow, and I'm a slow walker, but I never walk back. And so I kind of see that as he was a very forward-thinking person, and let what he believed kind of motivate his steps. Next, we have, whenever I hear anyone arguing for slavery, I feel a strong impulse to see it tried on him personally. I think that's a pretty interesting quote. See, that's kind of his natural impulse, and maybe that's some honesty there, but I think it seems like it would be really easy to argue for slavery if you were a slave owner. But he's saying, you know what, these conditions are not right, that's not how humans should be treated. Why don't you try it out yourself and see what you think. Judge not, that you be not judged. In giving freedom to the slave, we assure freedom to the free, honorable alike in what we give and what we preserve. We shall nobly save or meanly lose the last best hope of earth. And he often referred to the United States as the last best hope of earth. And I think that's a really interesting reference or way to view this country. Let's have faith that right makes might, and in that faith let us to the end dare to our duty as we understand it. And then one that I really think just matches up so well with his beliefs and the way that he chose to live his life is be sure you put your feet in the right place and then stand firm. And so I think that really just kind of puts some weight as far as to looking at his life, the decisions that he made, what went on during his presidency, is that his quotes seem to really kind of match up with his behavior, with his actions. Make sure your feet are in the right place and stand firm. And so I kind of want to talk, not about the Civil War real in depth or anything, but I think if you look at the Civil War, if you can put yourself in Abe's boots and knowing that, okay, these are my convictions, these are my set of beliefs, that I want the nation to be one, that we're better off as one, and that all people should be granted the same liberties. Sitting in his boots in the chair, knowing that the nation is going to go to war against itself, that hundreds of thousands of people are going to die, that there's going to be war, swords, blood, drums, flags, the whole thing, and then be able to commit to that, knowing that this is ultimately what is best for the nation. And I think that would be such a difficult decision to make. Just sending people to war, having the own country fight itself, I think I think that really took a lot of courage on his part. And going back to that, the sense that I got from Lincoln in that movie is that wasn't even a question. He wanted to see that happen. He wanted to see the nation be one, and that 13th Amendment got passed. And I thought that was really interesting. And so how do we relate this to our faith at all? I'm trying to think okay, great, we're talking about Abe Lincoln, we're talking about the role of conviction. And let me start somewhere else. What is conviction? And so I looked at dictionary.com, I think it is, or dictionary, one of them, I don't know. Anyway, it basically just said dictionary is a dictionary. It's a place to go find words, right? That conviction is basically just a set of beliefs. And I thought that was an interesting definition, somewhat thin, because I really think conviction is more than that. I think conviction is something that motivates your actions. It doesn't just necessarily sit on the shelf, that it's something that you put into action. I think convictions are lived out in our daily lives. And so what I want to do is try and take the story of Abe Lincoln, his convictions, his beliefs, that the nation be one, and that all people should have the same liberties, that we're all equal, and then translate that into our faith. And so something that I love that Charlie preaches often, he often teaches directly the stories and the teachings of Jesus, right? And so I think it's really easy to find a lot of Jesus's convictions throughout the scripture. I think there's like a billion different things that we could come across and implement. And the one thing that really stuck out to me when I was kind of thinking, what is maybe the greatest conviction that Jesus had? And what kind of came to me was that he was going to die, essentially, that we might have life. And so I wanted to take us to the Last Supper and kind of read about that real quick. And so I think we've all seen the Leonardo da Vinci painting, right? I was telling last service how I used to have, I think we got it from like a thrift shop or something. But in my old office, we found this Leonardo da Vinci painting that was totally fake, and it was an alarm clock. And we tried to fix it, and it lit up and did all these things, and we never made that happen, unfortunately. I can't imagine the Last Supper alarm clock. I don't even know what happens. I guess that's the mystery or the surprise of it all, huh? All right, so I'm going to read from Matthew 26. We're going to go to verse 20, and I'll read through verse 30, I believe. If you guys want to join me, it'll also be on the screen. All right, so when evening came, Jesus was reclining at the table with the 12. And while they were eating, he said, "I will tell you the truth. One of you will betray me." They were very sad and began to say to him one after the other, "Surely not I, Lord." Jesus replied, "The one who has dipped his hand into the bowl with me will betray me. The Son of Man will go just as it is written about him." Excuse me. But woe to that man who betrays the Son of Man. It would be better for him if he had not been born. I'm trying to put myself in Judas' shoes here, reach into the bowl, and he just calls you out. Like, I think I'd freak out. What? No. Me? We're bread together. Jesus, all good. Anyway, then Judas, the one who would betray him, said, "Surely not I, Rabbi." Jesus answered, "Yes, it is you." While they were eating, Jesus took bread, gave thanks, and broke it, and gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take and eat, this is my body." Then he took the cup, gave thanks, and offered it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many of the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will not drink of this fruit of the vine from now on until that day when I drink it anew with you in my Father's kingdom." When they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. And so I think this is a really paramount verse or story section of scriptures here, talking about Jesus is sitting at the table with his buddies, his 12 closest friends, and basically tell them, "I'm going to die. And this is what you can do to remember me." And something that really sticks out to me in this verse is when he says, "The Son of Man will go just as it is written about him." And so I think that the conviction of Christ lines up so nicely here, because there's all these scriptures, all these prophetic scriptures that say Jesus is going to come and this is what's going to happen. And then he is there in that moment fulfilling these scriptures. And I think, and I told last service, I don't really want to get into like a free will or deterministic debate sort of thing, or even go there. However, it's interesting to think, what if Jesus really didn't want to? And it's pretty evident that in the Garden of Gethsemane, after that, Jesus is really wrestling with this. He says, "Father, take this cup from me." He's in like an extreme amount of distress, does not want to do this at all. And who would blame him? I don't think he was like, "Yeah, cool, let's go get killed today. This is going to be fun. Crucifixion, get whipped a little bit. Yeah, just another day for me." I think this was a really painful decision for him to make. But knowing that the scriptures kind of led up to this point in his life, he knew that this was a decision that he had to make. And he chose to. And so I think going back to that set of convictions, and that conviction is not, to me, is not just simply a set of beliefs, but yet something that motivates you to action. I think that's evident in Jesus' decision to ultimately go to the cross and die so that we might live. And so I'd like to draw a quick parallel, I guess, with Abraham Lincoln in that. And another thing that really stood out to me in watching Lincoln, more so reading the book Killing Lincoln, was that Abe was pretty certain he was going to die. He was just, I know it's going to happen, I don't know when. However, this is what needs to happen, and if I get shot or if I get killed or assassinated, then so be it, sort of thing. And I think knowing that, okay, this is my presidency, how am I going to live out this term? I think he could have maybe shied away from those difficult decisions to make. However, he knew what was best for the nation. He knew what was best in people's interests, and made those decisions despite knowing that he was going to be killed. And I think that we can kind of see that with Jesus as well. Last service I kind of got stuck saying the word assassinated a lot. And so going back to that, I think it would have been a lot easier to be assassinated back in the day than today. And so Abe could just be going down the street sort of thing, hang out in a carriage, and it would have been a lot easier today to get to him, a lot easier than today to get to him sort of thing. So I think it took a lot of courage for him to kind of just even go about his daily life, like going to the theater where he was eventually shot and killed. And so parallel that with Jesus. I think Abe, knowing that he was going to die, made these decisions anyway, chose to live his life the way that he wanted to live it, and displayed a lot of courage. And the nation is still one. The Civil War eventually ended, and the 13th Amendment was passed, and that liberty was granted to all, at least under the law, right? And so I think that parallel between Abe and Jesus is really kind of something to hold on to, as Jesus decided, I'm going to lay down my life so that you guys might have life. And it's interesting to think, what if he had chosen not to? I mean, how would the history of time be completely different? But yet he chose to. And so one of my favorite movies is the movie Inception. I don't know if you guys have seen that one. Leo's my man. And so if I ever feel like I have a really good grasp on things, I'll just go watch Inception, so afterwards I can be like, what is happening? My mind's blown after I watch that movie. And so one line that Leo says in there that I really love is he says, an idea can either define you or destroy you. And I think that's really true. However, I think in the case of Abraham Lincoln and in the case of Jesus, both of these things occurred. And so in the life of Abe, I think when we look back on him, he's defined by that era, right? He's defined by the Civil War, the nation being one. and the 13th Amendment being passed, and that liberty was granted to all, or freedom under the law. And so that also defines him, but that also kind of led to his destruction, I think. He was killed over it, basically. The Southern conspirators, they got together, they wanted to assassinate a bunch of people. Abe Lincoln happened to be assassinated at that theater on that night. And then parallel that with Jesus. I think that same belief or that same conviction that I'm going to die and display my love so that people might live their life and have the opportunity to live in harmony with God, I think is also something that defines Christ. When we look back at him, his love is evident in pretty much everything he does. However, it also destroyed him. It led him to the cross. He was killed, pretty brutal murder. And I think what's so great about that, or where our hope lies, is that in the Easter story after that was that he was resurrected and that he lives today. And so I think that idea notion that an idea can either define you or destroy you, it kind of poses a threat to our convictions. Is it something that we want to follow through on? Do we want to be defined by what we do? Or is it something that we see as a potential threat to our life that it might lead to our destruction? Maybe what we want to have happen doesn't follow through. Or maybe in an extreme case like Abe Lincoln's, it leads to your death. I don't know. And so that's kind of where I want to wrap up this discussion. It's just basically, what are your convictions? What are the things that motivate your actions on a daily basis? And then one thing I also want to leave you with is, what convictions do you have, right? And how are those related to hope? Let's pray. Lord, I thank you so much for the story of Abe Lincoln. Bumpy, not perfect at all, but just the lessons that we can pull from him. And I thank you that he fought that we all might have liberty under the law. And I'm extremely gracious and grateful for the life of Christ, that his convictions didn't allow him to shy away from facing death, that we might have life in you. I thank you so much for the opportunity to connect with you. And I pray for the opportunity also just to look at our own convictions and stare them in the face and see how those match up with what we believe and how those match up with what we do in our daily life. I pray for this time of communion. I thank you that we get to read about the Last Supper and how you told us to remember you. I pray that we might take this time to even just put ourselves at that table, knowing that you're going to die, and how would we react to that? I pray that we can remember you in this time. I pray this in your Son, Jesus Christ's name. Amen.